So this mix basics, these are like the basics of mixing, and we're going to use, subgrouping and everything inside of this and with this, along with this. Essentially, this is like stuff that's not really set in stone. Actually, I can take the headset off. I don't need to hear anything right now. Yeah, Monique, my pup is the same way. Yep, absolutely, yeah. So with this here, we've got the track order and we got a drum order as well. And this stuff is not, again, it's not really set in stone, but it's like really good guidelines to kind of follow. So for example, track order, drums and percussion, and then bass, guitars, keys, synths, sound effects, vocals. Now, a lot of times people will put the vocals up here at the top, and that's fine as well. It's really more about that you have an order that makes sense for you and that makes sense for people you're working with, and that you kind of stick to it. Organization is not about somebody coming in and telling you, you must organize like this. It's more just about saying, hey, just as long as you know how you're organized, as long as there is some organization, as long as everybody who's using that thing, whatever it is, knows how it's organized. So if you're working with other people, or if you're living with other people or whatever, then everybody has to stay organized in the same level of like organization. But if you are just working on stuff on your own, then that organization could be anything you want. So since we're in essentially my house right now, I would say let's use this track order right here. It's as good as any track order, and there is a reason for this track order being like this, and we'll come back to that in a second. Then we also have the drums order here. This drums order is loosely based around a TR-808 drum machine's order. So you get the bass drum, snare drum, hand clap, rim shot, closed hat, open hat, low tom, mid tom, high tom, ride cymbal, crash cymbal. It's a little bit different, but it's essentially same-ish. The reason why the bass drum and the snare drum and the hand clap are all together is because hand claps and snare drums are usually on the 2 and the 4, and the kick drum is like, doing its thing, especially if you're doing like house music and electronic stuff, more modern pop music, stuff like that. And I just like to have all these things kind of together, all these really important ones here, and the tom drums are usually later on anyway, so I put them kind of further down, and then your ride cymbal and your crash cymbal, just kind of making the whole thing. And then we have a cowbell, and then we have percussion. The percussion's usually at the end because percussion is kind of lumped together as one big group of percussion stuff, and for me usually, and so I just put that after all my main drums here. All right, so going back to why I like to put my track order like this is right here where it says mixing. Build your mixes from the bottom up. Drums, percussion, bass, piano, rhythm, guitar. This is the rhythm section. The rhythm section really defines what our sound is, and we'll talk about this. I want to play you some songs when we get over to Zoom. I'm going to play you some stuff. But if you listen to, for example, there's a guy who I like a whole lot. I think his songs are hilarious. His name is Richard Cheese. And he actually just released a version of WAP, which is kind of funny. But one of my favorites from him is Baby Got Back. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of great ones from Richard Cheese. He's great. And so if you're watching this on YouTube later on, I really encourage you to go look him up. But Baby Got Back is a really good one because the original song is a hip hop song, and he does this like, loungy kind of Vegas lounge version of it. And the really important part with all this is that you can tell just from the rhythm section what kind of genre it is. The rhythm section is so important for what is the genre. It sets the foundation for everything else. So once you've got the rhythm section set up, you mix that first. Once you've got it set up, then you can go down 2 paths that are equally valid. You can mix all the other instruments and then the vocals. So essentially you're just setting up your whole instrumental mix, and then you mix the vocals into that. Or you do the rhythm section and then the vocals and then bring in other stuff, because you could make the argument that the vocals and the rhythm section are the 2 most important pieces of the puzzle. So if that's the way you look at it, which is totally valid, then you would want to mix the rhythm section first and then do the other instruments. And then do the vocals, and then the other instruments. So for most of us, a lot of us are mixing some kind of like club type of music these days, whether it's house music or trap or hip hop or pop music. A lot of pop music is even meant to be played in clubs these days. Clubs is just a really, it's It's a big part of our lives, especially once we all get vaccinated and we can go back to clubs again. Yes, pretty soon, right? A good mix starts with a great recording. For the drums, the better the recording, the easier it is to mix. Get those drums sounding amazing. Start the mix in mono with no or few effects, especially if you're not doing electronic stuff, you're doing more rock stuff. Focus on the levels, pay attention to how the instruments sound together. Don't use spatial placement as a crutch, especially for club stuff. You definitely want to have some cool spatial things going on, but especially for clubs, really it's got to sound good down the middle, because you never know where speakers are going to be placed in a club. Like there's going to be a speaker over here, and there might be another speaker over on the other side of the room in some kind of weird position facing in a weird direction. And that might be the left and the right. So you want to make sure that you have everything kind of in the middle. Don't use spatial placement as a crutch. You can use it as like a little added bonus thing, but make sure your mix sounds good without it. Get those drums sounding really amazing first. Drums is the place you start. And then remember, mixes are relative. This is so important. And I mentioned this the other day, how important this is. Mixes are relative. If you have two elements like A and B, and you want A to be louder, turn B down. Don't turn A up. Because if you keep turning things up when you want it to be louder, eventually you're not going to have any more headroom. You're going to be clipping your outputs. So that's a really important thing. Remember that they are relative. So you start with your drums, and then I mix everything else around those drums. And I always get my drums hitting maybe like around -10 dB, because I know I'm going to put other stuff in there. It's going to make everything about like louder. So I get my drums kind of like peaking at -10 dB or something like that, -8 dB something. And then I put my vocals and my other instruments in there. So the final should be between -6 and -4 or something like that. But just keep in mind, everything's relative. So here, these number 1 and 2 here are the same. A is louder than B. And number 1, this scenario keeps our headroom. So we can still have our headroom. But number 2, don't do this. If it's done too many times, you're going to start clipping your output. So you really want to make sure that, what am I trying to accomplish with what I'm about to do with my mix? Oh, I'm trying to make A louder. Okay, well, what am I doing so far? If I'm like mixing between a kick and a snare drum, and I want my kick to be louder, I can just turn my snare drum down. It's as easy as that. That's a great way to do it. So I highly recommend kind of keeping that in your head, and it's a big thing. When you're mixing in new elements, once you've got that foundation set, when adding new elements into the mix, start with the levels down, then turn them up to fit the mix. This will help you balance it with the other instruments more easily. Okay. So here, let me just show you what I mean by that. We're going to do a little thing here, the song. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn my vocals down. Oh wait, this is the wrong song. Hold on. Put that back up. All right, just save that. Close that down. Going to go in here to my rough mix of Rubadoo. And we're going to get these drums going. I'm going to go ahead and mute my vocal group just completely. And let's go in here. Okay, we got the chorus here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mute that vocal group completely. And I'm going to turn my guitars down and my bass down. We're going to start with these drums. Cool. And we can hear the reverb. Well, let's turn that reverb on. There we go. So now we just start drums. The reason why we were hearing the guitars was because they were coming through the reverb. All right, so now I got these here. So let's turn my bass up into this. turn these down. Cool. All right, so I'm just balancing that bass drum in there. Cool. Now let's get our guitars in. Usually what I would do with this is I wouldn't have my guitars so low. We had these guitars are really low right here, and the reason why they're so low is because I was mixing them without subgroup mixing, because when we were doing this initially, we were doing it without the subgroup mixing. My dog there's a lot of people moving behind me, and the dog is seeing them, and so she's starting to get stressed out that they're doing amazing fun things. So let me see, you turn the drums down to make the bass more present in the mix. No, I started with my drums as the foundation, and I'm bringing my bass up into them here. So now at this point, if I'm like, here, let's see what my output level is. If I go over here, and we can see I'm peaking a little bit too hard right there, right? So what I want to do is, let's pull these back down a little bit. And kind of recalibrate here. That's better for my drums. And then pull the bass up. And I'm just gonna turn my headphones up. So it's nice and loud in my headphones, making me like how I want it to be, more comfortable. And I think that's a good level for that bass there. And now, we're gonna go over here to my acoustic guitar. When I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to what my drums and my bass are doing. I'm bringing my acoustic guitars up, and this is gonna help it because I like my drums to be loud in my mixes. It's possible this mix doesn't call for such loud drums, but I'm a type of person, I like my drums to be loud. So having that in mind, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull my other instruments up into that. And we can still hear those drums really present, but we can also hear the guitars. Awesome. Now let's get these vocals going on. Oh wait. Sorry. I just banned the wrong person. I had to unban them. Sorry, Divyan. My finger slipped because the dog hit my finger. I feel so bad right now. Oh, I hope he comes back. Because that person put like a thing in there and I was trying to do it with my iPad. Horrible. Okay, anyway, and he was asking questions. Oh, I feel bad. Sorry, I'll send that person a message. Hold on, wait, can I? User actions. I don't know how to use this stuff, sorry. Oh well, anyway, hopefully that person comes back. Anyway, so what we're gonna do here is with our vocal group, I'm gonna turn my vocals that are actually being used here. Yeah, he shared yeah, okay, I'm glad you came back, sorry about that. My finger slipped on my iPad and I saw that it banned you. I was like, oops. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go over here and turn the vocal, we're in the chorus part, right? So the chorus here, the chorus group, I'm gonna keep my vocal group up. I'm gonna turn my chorus group down. And let's pull this up. Walking up that mountainside, you said you were And I'm pulling that down because that snare drum thing is like a little bit too loud for me. And again, just keep in mind that I'm mixing this on headphones. So everything, take it all with, for what it's worth, because obviously mixing in headphones is not the best ever, right? So, okay, so we got this, we got our vocals in there.
Walking up that mountainside, you said you were the one I will follow.
Now, I'm the type of person where I like my vocals to be loud, but I don't like them to be like karaoke loud. And depending on what you're listening to, what kind of style you're listening to, if you're listening to house music, vocals are a little bit more quiet in the mix. For folk music like this, I would keep the vocals loud, but I wouldn't make them like super, super crazy loud. I would keep them within the mix. And I've already, we already went over this in one of my other videos where it's talking about like panning and all that stuff, and we kind of talked about all that another time. And we did some panning in here, but if you want to hear it in mono, then what we can do is just put this in mono right here.
Walking up that mountainside, you said.
And you can hear how much it just pushes that right into the middle. So once we pull that back, we're going to have to adjust the level a little bit. And Quixie says, what effects have you put on what? Mainly drums and acoustics, and what do you do for vocals? So the vocals actually, if you go on my YouTube channel, which is Make Beats New York, and actually there's a video up there talking about the vocal effects that we use. We talked about that on Monday, actually March 8th, and there's a whole video about that. So there's a lot of stuff going on here on these. I'm not going to stop and talk about it right now because we've already covered that, but you can actually go see a whole video about that on my YouTube channel. All right, so we got this. Let's go to a different part of the song, because right now we've just been looping that chorus. Let's go to a different part of the song and check out what the verse is doing vocally.
Wanna feel your
Wow, you hear how loud that is compared to everything else, compared to the chorus we were just doing? So I'm gonna pull this back.
word. Embrace me like skin across your bones, like skin across your bones. Saw the summer sun rising without you.
And just get this at a nice level there, and let's go over to the bridge here at the end, because I got those bridge vocals next. And then just here with these, I'm going to pull the vocal bridge group down because it's going to be way too loud. We're going to pull it up into the mix. Cool. And that sounds really great. Now keep in mind, for these vocals here, I've got a heavy effects chain going on with these vocals here. One band, de-esser, compression, EQ, and whatever this is. Oh, this is like a tape emulation. So I have a whole bunch of this stuff going on. So I don't need to put, I'm not going to put more effects on my vocal group for the bridge here. This is really just it's just for dealing with the mix of everything, because we can see I've got this mix set up very particularly. Let me go ahead and hide these. I don't need to see these. Oh, puppy. So we don't want to, we don't need to put more effects on these vocals here. The only place you may want to put some effects is if you need to just pull them in a little bit more. People often talk about compression on a subgroup that glues it together, and that's kind of a weird thing to say. It's not very what does it mean, right? The compression glues it together. Well, what it means is that once you've got compression on the group channel, everything affects everything else. So if I've got a kick drum that hits a little bit too hard, it's going to pull down even the snare drums and the hi-hats, and it's kind of moving with everything, is helping everything else move together. That's why you want to be really careful with too much compression, but with just the right amount of compression, it can really feel like it solidifies it into one thing. A really good example that I've kind of thought about is that if you sample a loop from a song, like a drum loop from a song, that's going to sound like a drum loop. It sounds like you're using a loop. And if you take and made the same drum loop, but with all individual samples, you're going to have a hard time getting it to sound like that loop. And one of the reasons is because that loop has gone through layers of compression on and like in mastering and everything on those drums as a whole. So if you wanted to make your own drum kit sound like that loop, you have to put it through those same paces. So you want to like put a little compression on it, you want to maybe master it down, put it like on some tape and stuff like that. And so with these vocals here, if I want to kind of make sure they're all kind of pulling together, maybe what I would do, and this would be case by case, but let's just try it on this vocal group here. Let's go ahead and put this compressor on here. Let's use the Slate red compressor. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. Let's use a fancy compressor. Let's use the Mu compressor, because that one is like the Fairchild, right? That's like, this is like, for those of you who don't know, a Fairchild compressor is like $25,000, and there's not that many that even are in the world. But that's what this is kind of emulating here. And let's see what we got here. Glue. Oh, here we go. There's one that's just called Glue. So let's just put that on here.
Do your worst and I will bear it.
Now, one thing you can see immediately that happens is it just pushes those vocals right to the front. So let's go ahead. Let's start at a different place too. Let's go back to the verse.
Wanna feel your word, embrace me, like skin across your bone,
Nice.
like skin across your bone. Saw the summer sun.
Now with this here, we have a little bit, so we've got the threshold here. We may want to pull that threshold back just a little bit.
Wanna feel your word, embrace me.
Because you don't want this gain reduction hitting too hard. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this right here and I'm listening to it.
Wanna feel your word, embrace me, like skin across your bone.
There we go.
Like skin across your bone.
Now it should also be said that these should be, for the most part, pretty, like, they've already got compression on them, kind of like flattening them out a little bit. So you don't really need, this one's not to kind of control everything. This is really just to kind of pull it together.
Wanna feel your word, embrace me, like skin across your bone, like skin across your bone. Saw the summer sun rising without you.
I'm gonna go ahead and put the track preset on here.
I wanna see your.
Let's see if the computer can handle it. Maybe not.
Staring back at me, all the lives we're living in between, following ourselves,
Wow.
following our hearts.
Monique says, can compression be applied to a subgroup mix, and would you recommend it, or is it best on individual tracks? Again, it depends on what you're going for. As you can see, I've got compression on every single vocal track in here, and I just put compression on the main vocal group. For vocals, I would recommend, and this is me, if you've got individual microphones for people and you've got a whole bunch of like individual takes and stuff like that, I would put the compression on each one of those just to control it. But then I would also maybe add a little bit of compression to the overall everything just to kind of pull it all together. Because remember, the effect that's on the individual track is only affecting that one thing. When I put it onto the group, it's now affecting everything all together. It's like the difference between having like corn and then putting corn in a soup. Once you put that corn in the soup, it's gonna get all the flavors of the soup, right? But if I just have corn by myself, I might put some salt and butter on it. It's like, that tastes good. But if I wanted to have the corn flavor kind of permeate the soup that I'm making, I would need to put the corn in the soup and let it sit for like a few hours maybe, right? And that's how, like, when you make guacamole, I've been making guacamole here, so I've got guacamole in my brain. When you make guacamole, if you eat that guac immediately after you make it, it's gonna taste different than if you let it sit for a few hours and eat it, because all those flavors, when you mix them, they need a chance to kind of get together and hang out and have a little party and get to know each other better. And that's the same thing with this. If we have individual effects on them, they're going to sound good, and you're going to have like all these, things going on. The compressors are going to make sure they're not over compressed and stuff. Like they're going to make sure they're like not going too loud. But when I want to pull them all together, I want to put a compressor on the subgroup. Yeah. Like smoothing and blending as a group. Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's go over to the chorus. I'm going to pull up my thing here. Let's put this.
Walking up that mountainside, you said you are the one.
Now you can see here with this chorus group, some of these are getting compressed a lot because I haven't really adjusted my compressor for these. I opened up 2 compressors on here by holding down Shift and clicking them.
Walking up that mountainside, you said you are the one I will follow.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that it wasn't over, like going too far, because this line was kind of popping down a little bit more than what I was comfortable with, but it's not that bad. So what I'm going to do, though, because this chorus is not quite as loud as everything else, well, I still have a lot of room here on my chorus group, so I can pull it up.
Walking up that mountainside, you said, just wanna feel your word.
So you can hear how loud that is.
Skin across your
But I like
skin across.
how loud that is. So I want my chorus to come in more.
Walking up that mountainside, you said you are the one.
Carl. So the subgroup is the bowl. The subgroup is the bowl. Absolutely. The subgroup is the guac. I guess the bowl for the guac, right? And then all the individual pieces, all the individual channels is like your avocados, your onions, your garlic, your cumin, your cilantro, your salt, your pepper. That's all the individual tracks.
Walking up that mountainside, you said you are the one I will follow. Watch you wake up every day for the rest of your life. Burning home, my heart just can't contain. 'Cause everything you are is everything I want.
Cool. Now this is where automation comes in. Let's say, for example, first of all, what is this right here? What is that?
So much more.
What is that? What is that? Let's hear that. Hold on for a second. And let's hear what. Oh, wait, why am I not hearing it? I don't have something solo. Solo saved. Vocal group is not solo saved. Here we go. What are you doing? Oh, that's just somebody was just practicing. Get out of here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, let's just say that this second verse is a little bit too loud. This is where automation would come in. If everything else is great, well, on the second verse here, I'm going to go to my subgroup, and I'm going to put a trim plugin on here right at the end. And I would definitely put it multi-mono, other, there we go, trim. I would definitely put this on the vocal group here so it's not affecting everything. You could put it on everything, but I kind of want it just for this one here. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go ahead and click the enable automation for gain, and now I can automate this right here. Close that because we don't need that. And I'm just going to go in here and say, okay, let's get our gain. I'm just going to highlight before and after a little bit. I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. And when I click, you see that little number that appears right there? That number is how much I'm turning it down. Let's just turn it down by like a couple dB. And now let's listen to it verses 1 and 2. So let's start over here with number 1. Carl says, what is the reason for using trim instead of the volume automation? You forgot. Yeah, so this is so, in general, if my vocal is too loud or soft, I can just grab the fader and move it up or down for general mixing stuff. This is just automation within that. Remember, it's like relative versus absolute mixing.
Wanna feel your word
Cool, let's listen to this one over here.
Wonder why'd you wake up every day for the rest of your...
Now, in reality, probably I don't need to adjust this level.
I wonder why'd you wake up every day.
I think it sounds pretty good. I'm just kind of showing you what you could do. I don't know that I would actually necessarily do it for this track, but just, you know, something you could do. Yep, Carl, great. I'm glad you got it. Awesome. Now let's go over to the bridge. Let's go to this chorus.
Walking up that mountainside at dawn.
Awesome, let's go to the bridge.
Do your worst and I will bear it. I will bear it all. Just for you. Do your worst and I will bear it. I will.
Awesome, sounds good. And then let's get this guitar solo and the bridge going on. So I don't think we've mixed this one yet. Where are you? Guitar solo. Here we go. Turn that down because it's going to be well. Actually, here, let me turn these up here because remember I was doing that with you know what? Here, let's group these together. Group solo guitar ID number S, ID letter S. Boop. There we go. Now I'm going to turn them up and they should have like relatively stay the same. Awesome. Sounds great. And then what you would definitely, obviously, I'm jumping around just to save time a little bit, but you definitely want to listen to the song as a whole and really pay attention to what the levels are doing, especially for these vocals, because we've got them all on different tracks and we've got everything spread out a lot. So now what we'd want to do is just go to the top and listen to it a few times. Maybe go take a break before you do this and then come back and listen to it. Because if you've been mixing all day, your ears they need a break. Make sure that just like when you're running and you're training and stuff like that, you take breaks. Your ears also need a break. So if you're doing a lot of mixing in a day, make sure you take breaks so it sounds so you get your ears a chance to rest. Rubadoo. Final mix. All right. Solo safe, we should know this, but command click the solo button on the track. If you make a track solo safe, it will always play even when other tracks are soloed. Always solo safe aux tracks, never solo safe audio tracks. So what that means basically is, just to show you this, I know we've talked about it a few times, but you can see I've got like here, let's use this reverb as an example. I've already got everything solo safed. See that S is like kind of grayed out there? So if I do this, I go to vocal group, let's go to the vocal reverb. If that's not solo safe here, let's solo out my vocal here, my verse vocals here. Let me go ahead and group these, verse, vocal. And we'll do V for verse. All right, so if I solo these, they're going to be dry, no reverb. Are they? Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go to a part of the song that actually has a vocal.
Wanna feel your words, embrace me.
Now, if I want to hear the reverb, I would have to then solo my reverb.
Wanna feel your words, embrace me like skin of...
Right? If I have them solo saved, I don't have to then click that solo button on there. It's just going to run through.
Wanna feel your words, embrace me.
And that's why we want to solo save aux tracks. Now, you don't want to solo save your audio tracks because the same thing. If I solo save like my guitar here,
Wanna feel your words.
I'm always going to hear that guitar even when I solo something else. So you don't want to solo audio tracks, you just want to solo your aux tracks. I've tried to think about like instances where I would want to solo, say, an audio track, and I can't. So if you can, let me know. All right, sweet.